Okay, good day to everybody. Thank you so much for joining another awesome podcast of Splints and Whiskey. And with Splints and Whiskey, we are so excited because wow, it has been amazing how many military um, and first responders and gosh, all different types of military trainers are able to learn from one another, our peers, be able to help our battle buddies and ultimately serve so that we can keep people alive and we can stay away from those, gosh, horrific words that I hate to hear. Um, we regret to inform you. Horrible. So I'm so thankful for this podcast and I'm thankful so much for our guest today. Our guest today, his name is Rick Parento. Rick Parento is retired Army. He spent 20 years in the service. 16 of those years, he was a military medic, um, and uh, and then he continued to after retirement. He continued to to want to grow and help teach and coach and really enhance military medicine. And he now works at Walter Reed. Uh, Walter Reed National Military Medical Center as a manager in the simulation lab, one of the best sim labs I've ever seen in my life. So, um, and not to mention, he's a great guy with a beautiful wife, and I just love him to pieces. So, and he's funny, so we're all gonna have a blast. Um, so, Rick, that's just a little introduction from me to you. But why don't you tell our why don't you give kind of like your resume, if you will, of what I missed or messed up to our listeners who don't know you. Okay, just give
Yeah,
us a little bit of background of who you are, what you did, and then what you're doing today.
sure. Well, as you said, I retired 20-year Army medic, 16 of those as a medic, and I was very privileged to have served with some incredible men and women across many different services within the Army, but also some joint assignments during my 3 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, sandwiched in the middle between the 2 of them. I couldn't be more proud of the opportunities and time that I had with the units that I had. As I said, the personnel that I served with probably deserve way more credit than I do. I will give a lot of I served with 136 Infantry with the 1st Armored Division out of Fort Bliss, Texas.
Ooh, I
They
love Fort Bliss.
I did two deployments out of there with them, and I did my first deployment with an MP unit out of Fort Lewis, Washington, which is now JBLM, with the 66th MP Corps. So a varying different array of assignments and missions with both of those units, but overall the full gamut of time and training environments and downrange and everything, and then transitioned after all that time. Last duty assignment at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center and in the simulation center, and I was there for the last I don't know good bit of my time, and took up simulation and did training in there and really helped make sure that the medics that left that assignment going to the unit, because that's one of the things that we always used to hear in the unit was like, oh, you're coming from a hospital, or oh, you got the hospital low ready or whatever when you're in the field, and really
Yeah.
trying to make sure that the medics that are leaving Walter Reed and going back to the line really get some exposure to that kind of stuff and stay up to those skills so they're not showing up kind of behind the game there with that. So yeah, it was I was very blessed and very fortunate to do my time and like I said, to have served with those folks. And I'd really honestly like to take a quick moment just to give a shout out to the PA that I deployed with from 136, Captain Michael Snatch, actually. And he did a terrific job of training up myself and all the medics that were assigned to our platoon for both of the deployments, all of our field problems. He was an absolutely exceptional individual, and huge praise and shout out to him. He was amazing, and I definitely would not have been the medic that I was or am without his guidance and input and all that kind of stuff. So,
Man, that's awesome. I bet him hearing that, is he still living?
yeah,
Okay,
he's actually he's retired now as well and lives down in South Carolina. So,
okay, good. I bet, oh my gosh, that probably brought tears to his eyes. I mean, it's like any of us who are in a coaching position or a training position of any sort, man, just to hear one of your students say, "You changed my life." That is awesome. That's awesome. Wow. So thank you, Michael, so much for bringing us an amazing person here, and Rick. Gosh, because I know that from the soldiers and the soldiers I speak to that he trains, wow, he's certainly exceptional. So that was awesome. Um, I want to ask you a question about Fort Bliss. I'm a lay person.
mhm.
Um, I know enough to be dangerous because I've learned some acronyms, and I'm very proud of that.
Sure.
I do
It's
have an
hard.
acronym.
It's not an easy world to get into. I'll tell you. Once people get around it and they start hearing like, what did you just? Do you understood that? I did actually understand all of what they just said. Yeah.
I know. And you get to the point, it's like, and then you talk to regular people after once you've gotten to do it, like, because I'm civilian. Now, my dad was a captain in the army in Vietnam. My grandfather was a colonel in World War II. So, you know, they speak some slang, but I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm just like it's like alphabet soup when I'm calling on you guys, so I actually do have this I have
Yeah.
this awesome, like thing that just breaks down everything. But I wanted to ask you about your time. Where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in Concord, New Hampshire.
Okay. So to me it's just strange because you ended up well, Texas, Fort Bliss, that's awesome. And then you ended up going to Joint Base Lewis McChord. Um were you in a sim center then training too, or were you out in the field then
Yeah.
as
So
a medic?
actually, too, real quick, being from New Hampshire, obviously there's not a large contingent usually out there of service members from New Hampshire, obviously a small state and all that, but service was kind of in my blood and my lineage for a long time. My grandfather is a retired senior chief from the Navy.
Yeah.
I had an uncle that was in the Army for many years. I had a cousin in the Air Force for many years. And I was, so it was kind of something that I just felt right kind of doing, and always kind of wanted to do that. Yeah, so I was at Fort Lewis was my first assignment as a medic. That was my first deployment with the military police there. But I loved it. I loved being out at Fort Lewis. It was great. And part of joining the military in general for me was I really felt like I needed to get out to see more of the country, not because there was issues or problems with New Hampshire in general, just saying, hey, I want to see more of the country and what it has to offer. And I also had the urge to serve and do things and be a member of the military, kind of always in the back of my mind. I thought if there was something
Yeah.
that happened in my life, I could probably do that. And I felt like it was a good deal. So
Yeah.
I did. So as far as going to answering your question about being in the sim, so in those two locations, no, I was never actually assigned to a simulation center, but I used simulation as part of my training going through and preparing for all three of my deployments, and then also just in general keeping up with my skills outside of the deployment window. So I had been some exposure to it for sure. I didn't necessarily know that it was called simulation at the time. Obviously,
Yeah.
looking back and as I progress and grow to, I realized what exactly it was. But for sure, definitely feel problems being out there, and whether it was just other soldiers being role players, just being casualties, or finding a way to incorporate those, or doing the BLS certifications and things, the basic life support certifications, and using the low fidelity mannequin or just the upper torso, stuff like that. So yes, definitely some exposure. Probably not as much as they're hopefully getting to nowadays.
Yeah.
But definitely some exposure with it, and seeing and feeling and going to the Mystic sites, the medical training centers on each of the bases that I was there, and they always seem to have some
And you
mannequins
had
and
them
stuff that
both
they would
at,
use.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
You
no.
had, um, you had Mystics both at Fort Bliss and at Joint
Mhm.
Base Lewis McChord, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Yeah. Sure did.
yeah, I visited Carson. I visited probably about 10 to 12. I've not been to and Bliss is killer. McCoy. Oh my God, McCoy is off the hook. Have you been to McCoy? It's so good.
No, I
Um,
haven't.
oh God, it's so good. And Carson's really good too. But I really want to go to Joint Base Lewis McChord. I just want to.
It's
That's
gorgeous. I loved it out there. My wife and I both loved it out there. When she was on active duty, her and I, we were stationed there together, and it was gorgeous. We loved it out there. The base, everything about it out there, the whole area was great. So
yeah,
yeah, we
like
did like it.
I would move there. I would move there.
It's great.
Yeah, oh gosh, it's awesome out there. I just love that. I just love that part. I'm born and raised Virginia Beach, so I'm a lot like you. Born and raised where and we're probably roughly the same age, early 20s. So
Obviously.
yeah, exactly. So but you know, I was born and raised Virginia Beach, right? So we're next to Norfolk Naval. My prom was at Fort Story Army. You know,
Hmm.
Langley's down the street. You know,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I was a bartender in college to every Navy SEAL that wanted to kill Bin Laden, and some did. So that was good. You know,
There you
so
go.
right. So but we were raised, and so it's funny because your wife Erica also
Hmm.
served. And is still working at Walter Reed as well. She's the bomb. I love her. Now, but we were raised like, Elizabeth, if you marry someone in the Navy, great. Or if you marry someone in the Army, like you could get the VA loan, like stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
and we're not that old, right? But it
No.
just was never a real push, for us to join. And
Yeah.
although my grandfather was Navy, and then my others, my on my dad's side of the family was all Army, right? But we didn't do that. So the way I served was because of where I was located, is that I sold I sold PTSD, depression, anxiety, all this stuff to nurses, family members, everything all throughout that area to civilian that had TRICARE, because
Hmm.
their husbands are deploying right after
Right. Right.
September 11th, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I mean, and then down the road we got to end up, coming into what we do today, which is military medicine, and it is the bomb. I mean, I love walking into a sim lab or putting on boots and uniforms and everything, going out in the field and man, playing with blood and messing with mannequins and all this different stuff. So it's awesome. Let me ask you about something. And so whenever I look down, it's because I'm writing notes. Okay.
Sure.
Um, so you said you did use sim on deployments, which I understood. And back in the day, yeah, we've had sim for a long time, like Laerdal and things like that. But obviously it's increased through time. I mean, my
Yeah.
goodness,
For sure.
and, yeah. But when you say that when you had sim on deployments that you were utilizing, and they were low fidelity mannequins, and this isn't a plug for Rescue Randy or anything like that. Like that's a household name. Um, my company. Well, this is not a. This has nothing to do with my company. This is for us to grow in our simulation training
Hmm.
and preparing our medics to save lives. However, um, back then, was it really pretty much just like a Rescue Randy, right? I mean, that was pretty much. I mean, and I know we still use Rescue Randys like crazy too, but
Yes.
was that kind of what you were doing? And
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember, going through training at Fort Sam Houston. It was, a lot of probably the Rescue Randy type stuff where we were in the field just dragging them around. They just, get used to the weight and the moving and transporting those casualties over a shorter period of time or a shorter period of space, and do that just to get us kind of used to that mechanism as far as, and then, using them in the Mystic sites and stuff to get a little bit more advanced. Actually downrange, the only time I really came across any, and I think it was probably a rescue, Randy, if I had to think about it. They brought it out to one of the small fobs, and I was really only at small fobs that were really kind of, I don't want to say off the grid, but they were away. I wasn't on the big, with the hospitals and all kinds of stuff. I always, fortunately, always ended up.
Sorry to interrupt you. To our listeners, what's FOB?
Forward operating base. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah. I need to. So
yeah, I was always out at forward operating bases. I was never permanently assigned to someplace like a Bagram or Kandahar or something like that. I was always out further with the front lines, closer to that stuff, whether it was just because that's where the unit was, or because my units would sometimes break down and they'd send an element to one location and keep some of the element at another location. And I was always one of those that through either just having the short straw or just leadership thinking I was that good, or because I chose to just say, hey, I have experience in doing it out in that environment. So rather than subject a younger soldier to something like that, say, hey, you know what, I'll go take this one and I'll bring a couple younger soldiers with me, but I'll be out there and kind of do that thing. So
would you go out to the conflict at that point? Like, so I'm talking about a conflict or an injury. Okay. So would you go out to an injury? Maybe you might bring some youngsters so you can mentor them up, and then stabilize them and then bring them back to like a field hospital.
Yeah, so a lot of them on those, depending on the mission, how many medics they would require, we would try to rotate it so the same medics weren't going out all the time, but they would go out on their missions in the vehicles in the convoy and do their piece. And they would, if they, experienced casualties and did the thing, they would treat their casualties and they would just evac them back to the field hospital at the forward operating base, where if we were fortunate enough, we maybe had a PA or something that was there, whether that was an organic. A lot of experiences with the MPs was we didn't, as the MP company, we deployed as a company, not as an entire like brigade or battalion. It was literally just a company of, say, 300 MPs with, 4 or 5 medics as part of that company. And they would go, and then they would take us when we got in theater and break us down and say, hey, okay, this platoon of MPs, you're going to go with this 10th Mountain Unit, and you're going to be out in this location. And this platoon of MPs, you're going to go be with this headquarters element over here. And your MP headquarters base is going to be here. And this other platoon, you're going to go with this other unit and be in another location that's a smaller base. And then even once you get there, sometimes you're breaking down saying, hey, out of this platoon of 40 MPs, we're going to break you down and we're going to send a whole squad with medic out to this other location, and you're going to be there for the duration of the deployment. So I'm there with like a squad of MPs, and so whenever the MPs go out on mission, I'm going out of the wire with them and do that. And then if we experience casualties, bring them back to that FOB. Maybe we've got a PA from, maybe it was a Navy PA, maybe it was an Air Force PA or some kind of provider that would be back on the FOB. We'd get them there. Again, a very small kind of field hospital. In some cases early on, it was basically a tent, like a tent, a general purpose, medium sized, decent sized tent, but it was that with plywood makeshift walls put up and a plywood floor just sitting on top of the dirt and rocks, and they'd have some litters or whatever set up in there, and we'd bring them back, and then the provider would be able to kind of treat them, and we'd get them either most likely on a helicopter would get called in, and they'd pick them up from the LZ on the FOB, or if we couldn't get air, if air was what they call black, meaning nobody's flying, then they would go, we would ground transport if we had to and go from there. Or at that point, the field hospital with the provider would kind of sit on them and treat them a little bit if they're like, oh, we can get air in a little bit, but if you can sit on them, we can do that. So that's that.
That's major. And so on your deployments, you did 3, you said, right? No, 6 or 3? 3.
3.
What kind, where were you deployed? Or are you allowed to say?
Yeah, the first deployment was, like I said, with the MPs out of Fort Lewis. We did 15 months in Afghanistan. Then I went to Iraq. After that one, went PCS down to Fort Bliss, then went to Iraq almost upon arrival down at Fort Bliss. Did Iraq, and then came back from Iraq. And then we transitioned from being a heavy track mechanized unit, so tanks and things like that. We transitioned after that deployment to Stryker Brigade. So we went through all that train up. And then as soon as we got trained up on that, we went right back out the doors to Stryker Brigade and deployed to Afghanistan for a second time for me with the Stryker Brigade.
If it's okay to ask you,
yeah,
because some people feel triggered. I have an entire episode on, and we'll do more on PTSD. Did in any of these deployments, did you begin to suffer from PTSD for some of the things you saw?
Yeah, I would say that I don't think I necessarily, like, while you're there and doing the stuff, not really. I wouldn't think I did, but definitely as time goes by, when you get back and you kind of get back into your daily life and you're back in garrison, there's things that can come up. I know my wife had mentioned to me a couple of times after I think it was my second deployment that in the on-base housing I was at, the master bedroom was there was like a wall that separated my master bedroom from the garage, but in between, in that space between the bedroom and the garage, was our water heater. And water heaters, when they start going and start bubbling, they turn on and they bubble and they boil and they make noise and they bang and they club around. Obviously, being old, I mean, I don't know if young people really know about that stuff, but water heaters do that, and they make noise, and then they thump and they bump and they make all kind of noise and stuff. So, but my wife had mentioned to me that there were multiple occasions in the middle of the night when the water heater would go on and start banging and bumping and making that noise, and that I would actually grab her while I was sleeping. And I don't recall this, but I would grab her and I would roll with her and basically go onto the floor, and I would land on the floor with her like on top of me, and then kind of roll toward the bed with her to protect her, because I thought, stuff was coming. And so it is definitely a piece. And I think there's probably still times, if I'm being honest with myself, that there's things that still kind of trigger, still things that kind of bother me. And I go through my periods where, I remember certain things, or I feel certain ways. I know personally, one of the bigger injury patterns that tend to get me the most bothered, or I deal with them and I can execute on them, but it's if I have the opportunity through training or whatever to just kind of bow out or say, hey, can somebody else kind of lead this one, is burns for me. I treated a casualty on my second deployment, and he was a friendly. He was in my unit, assigned to my unit. He was doing some work around the fob, so it wasn't even really necessarily a combat injury per se, but he suffered a pretty significant burn. Lots of burns over a good chunk of his body. And so we treated him in the aid station that we had on that location, myself and my PA and the other medics that were assigned there. We worked on him pretty extensively, medevaced him, got him out of there, he made it all the way back to the States. And our plan was to come visit him in San Antonio at the burn center there in San Antonio at the conclusion of the deployment. But he ended up not making it until we returned. Which is unfortunate, but it's something that kind of experience and that exposure to the significant burns and the treatment that we did was something that still kind of, those kind of burn scenes and burn patients and things like that can get me at times if I'm really into it. So those ones I try to, but obviously in the world of training and doing, like, you have to move on. And just like anything with the military, like, you can't just say, I don't like doing that and I'm not going to do that. Like this, I don't think so, man. Like, you got to do it. So, you drive on, you push through, but I would say if there's anything that really triggers me, it's probably burns that get me more than anything else.
I'm the same. Okay. Well, not me. I have a dear friend, and you'll see him actually, I'm going to send you a book because I'm sending everybody his book. It's awesome. It's called Behind the Camouflage. And this guy is like your size, lamb on a lion's body, badass, killer dude, awesome, right? And and he's like, and he has he has 8 books out on PTSD, and shockingly enough, he was an infantry guy who is like one of the toughest guys ever. But he's like, but and he said, and I think you'd agree with this just from hearing from your 3 deployments, which I had not heard of because I was a pharmaceutical manager for years, right? And I had one guy on my team who was reserves. So when he would go for reserves, and also his job, not to negate it, his job was to teach school as his reserves in the army. Okay, so
Yeah,
he wasn't like in combat; he was teaching schools.
sure.
But when he came back, he had 4 months of just he couldn't work at all. He had 4 months where he could just like get used to, like he was like, I forgot what a couch was like just to sleep on a couch.
Sure.
Well, um, so that's what I know. And then when I spoke with this last guy that I'll send you the book for, that he'll be on the podcast as well. Um, he his PTSD, his issue is that and I've noticed this in my own life with things that I do. If you're a go-getter, right? Um, he's like, yeah, he goes, I deployed 6 times, but in between those 6 times, I'm training for the next time. He goes, people think you come home and you have like a year off. You're
Yeah,
still
no.
training. You're training the whole year off, right? So
Yep.
he didn't get hit with his PTSD until he was like uh standing at some ceremony after his 6th deployment. And I said, what did you get hit with? Because he said it just plagued him. It hit him. I said, was it like a plague of defeat? Was it a panic attack? Was it what? I wanted to know. And he said it was more of a panic attack, but but it was fire, only fire, and that was um because they were struck in a Humvee, and the driver, who was his CO, uh, or I guess you would call it CO,
Hmm.
uh, uh, he he burnt to death.
Hmm.
So like he can hear fireworks and stuff like that, but fire, like if
Yeah.
he's had a ski resort and there's fire, then he has
Hmm.
to get away for
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's insane. Um, okay, let's move on to your story is amazing, and thank you for everything. I love you. Um, so we talked about these different deployments and low fidelity mannequins. Now, so through 2013 was kind of like when you stopped being deployed and going out, right? So
Yeah.
no, is that right?
Yeah.
Or 21?
No, I got out in 21. I really stopped being deployed. My last deployment was I was back in 2013.
Okay, great. Okay, so with the things that you trained on,
Hmm.
then and now we're gonna fast forward through what we know. We know that currently you're an instructor at Walter Reed
Hmm.
for just about everything in the universe, and and you're a simulationist, and so you know what you're doing completely. So I would like to know how how was it then? And you don't have to go off forever. I mean, we know some
Yeah.
stuff. So how was it then? Um, what has changed to help you? And then what do you think with this new era of combat that we're
Hmm.
having? Then what do you think we need to develop or be prepared for? And then that you're doing with your people now?
Yeah. So training for me was it was so much early on of just like get the tourniquet on, get off the X, and then pretty much just try to get a bird, call the 9 line, get them out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
Uh, was the huge push. It was that it was moving the mannequins. It was doing that as get out there. All the different things that we get from our tactical combat casualty care training that's been around for a hot minute. So that's kind of where it was for me, and then it transformed as I got into my other further deployments after my first one. I mean, that was pretty much my whole first one, and all the training leading up to that was that, using the Mystic site and all that, was get them, move them, get tourniquets on, move them, give them a little bit of field care. So address some of the other wounds. You stopped a major and amputation type bleeding with a tourniquet. Okay, package them up more, treat the other, cuts or shrapnel or things like that they have, get them out of there, keep track of their
Can
airway.
I ask you a quick question there? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Quick question. I just wonder, in your, did you call it your CLS kit? Is that what you called it? Okay.
Yeah, we had a lot of CLS guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your CLS kit, did you have did you have morphine? Did you have medicine in there too?
No.
I didn't think you did, right? Because I used to pack those.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think funny, not funny, whatever. I don't know, however you want to consider it, but I can say on every single one of my 3 deployments, never once did I ever deploy with what they call the combat pill pack. I couldn't get morphine with my deployment with the MPs. My first one, I was the senior medic. I was it, and I was a corporal. I was an E4, so I was not in a position where I could prescribe medications. I couldn't do any of that stuff. So I couldn't go down range with that stuff. It was like Tylenol, it was like Motrin, Tylenol, some of the, standard, basically OTC meds is what I had when I went down range. And not until I got and linked up with a provider when I got to my forward operating base, if I had a provider or another, oh God, now I can't remember what the heck Andy is, independent duty corpsman, until we had I was around corpsmans or PAs or docs or anything like that. When I would get in theater, that would be where I'd be like, hey, okay, I'm here, I'm going out there, can you give me anything that I may provide or that's beyond this? So getting meds in particular was a very, very difficult road for us to go down in that first deployment. So no, we didn't really have much of that stuff. Our CLS bags, so the aid bags that we carried actually had quite a bit in them as far as supplies and stuff like that. The CLS bags, because that was a huge thing. Combat Lifesaver training was a huge thing. Early on, I had my entire MP company basically was Combat Lifesaver trained. And so we'd have, a dozen or so of those Combat Lifesaver bags with each platoon in the company. So they'd all have that in addition to the medic's aid bag and all that. So we had those kind of things, but medications were never morphine, none of that controlled stuff was with any of those during that. When I started deploying, on my second deployment, when I went with PA, Captain Ashley, we got meds because he could get the meds and he was able to kind of get those things. So that's when I started experiencing and having more of the morphine and things like that. But no, medications were not a big thing. We talked about them in training. We did, we talked about it. And even I think to this day, they still talk about the combat pill pack that you'll have when you go. And I'm like, has anybody ever seen a combat pill pack? Because again, not that I've seen everything in military medicine or done anything in that regard, but I'm like, I deployed 3 times, 34 months total deployed time versus through all 3. Not on any deployment that I ever have in my possession combat pill packs. Now I made, as soldiers or whatever came through and said, hey doc, I got a headache, I got this, I got that, or we're on a mission, they take a, casualty there. We could give them Motrin or Tylenol or whatever, all the different things that we could give. But it wasn't until I was with 136 and with them that we started getting actual medication. So then we'd start getting the fentanyl lollipops and morphine auto injectors and things like that. Is that's where I had on that stuff.
Yeah, it's so funny because I do like the company I work for it's like a boutique. It's like a boutique. It's like, hey, hand me your wish list for everything you need because I've got relationships with anything DoD. I'll do a first responder every now and then, if I like them. But kidding. But I'm all about but I'm all about DoD. And I laughed my brains out because our DLA, we've had a long talk about it, so believe me, we're on a first name basis. in a good way, because we really worked some stuff out, but like they kept turning down, I'll do kits that are medical kits for training, right?
Mhm.
And like I must have gotten turned down 14 times this year for $1.8 million worth of kits that needed to get out to the army. I mean, to the corpsmen. Um, Now 1.8 of it was not these fake medicines, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, uh, you know, I kind of think it's important that we have gauze, right? Or,
Yeah,
like
for
everything
sure.
else,
For
but
sure.
it was all in one kit, right?
Yeah.
So like, so like, people love me or hate me. I could care, right? Like, because I answer to like the soldier, the sailor, the airman, their families,
Yeah.
and God and our country. So I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. The requirement is that I have to have combat medicine, fake fentanyl, fake Benadryl, fake this, fake this, fake this. And then I keep getting them kicked back because I'm trying to sell medicine. I'm like, it's in all fluorescent. You've seen it. You work at the damn
Yeah.
sim lab, right? It's
Yeah.
like never to be used ever. I mean, it's like graffiti in the
Hmm.
medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
And I just don't get it. And I'm like, geez. And then so I don't know. We fixed it now, but I mean, um, you know me pretty well, and you've known me through a rough time. I had I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I like lost my mind for about 2 years. And you, Erica, and half of the North Capital region knew me well enough to love me enough to treat me like I was a patient and love me. So thank you. But but during that time, it's like I'd be looking at these things going, I don't get it. Like, I'm a taxpayer. I'm doing, and I bust my ass for you guys, and I don't get a VA loan or a paycheck or a this or that or a third or any of it. Like, I don't get that. So like, but I want to make sure they're safe, and these are
Yeah.
requirements. Why can't I procure
Yeah.
them? You
Yeah.
know? Um, or my people procure them. And so, it just shouldn't be so hard to buy or sell to the government, but
Yeah.
it's a common known thing. But yeah, I mean, we finally got it all passed and it was all good to go, and
Yeah.
that was cool. Um but I wondered about, in your kit, did you carry like morphine and stuff, or like because all we do for sim, as you know, because I like that you've done both. As you know, for sim, we just, like, we have a fake Narcan, we've got fake,
Right. Right.
because we need it, we need that tactical memory or
Yeah.
tactical.
If I was to really look at it, I would say even through all the years of training that I've been both partaken in and executed from both sides of it, and having, looking at it in different eyes now, 20 plus years later, um, I would say medication and medication administration, as far as the medic side of the house goes. I can't speak for all the other branches except for the little bit that I've seen with simulation, but I would say that's probably one of the greatest areas that I feel like medics probably could use more emphasis on. And I think they're trying to get there.
I know, I
Um,
hope
but,
so.
but it is something, and it's, while you were talking about that, it's funny because I started thinking in my mind about it, and I was like, if I really were to get to the nuts and bolts of it, on that first deployment that I went on, as I said, I was like the senior medical person for my company. So my company commander, my first sergeant, all the platoon sergeants are looking at me as an E4 at the time to be like, hey, like, you're our medical professional. Like, what we need and what we can do and what you can do is, you're the one. Like, there's nobody else for that. And as I was
Right.
thinking about that, I was saying to myself, I was very fortunate, knock on wood, and maybe this is a little remorse, I'm getting off slightly, but the training on that stuff and getting the medications, like, if I had to have had a true casualty that really needed a lot of attention for me during that first deployment, I don't know that I would have been able to effectively do that
I
without
know.
those
Yeah.
medications and without having that. Now, again, I was fortunate, or unfortunate, however you want, like a whole nother story aside, and I'll skip that. But I had good PA. I had a good person, a good provider there at that first fob that I had. So I knew that if I could just get them back to that provider, and his name escapes me, and I'm sorry for that, because he was spectacular. He definitely showed me a lot of things too, early on for a young E4, and I want to say he was. Air Force, but I can't remember. Anyway, he was spectacular, and I knew that if I could just get the patients back to them with the little bit that I had, that they would be okay, and I would stay and help and do the thing and get them out of there. But
Yeah.
when I finally got to 136 and had an actual provider who was over me, so I wasn't expected to be the medical expert, lead person on that, he helped tremendously in making sure that not only me, but all of our medics were up to speed on medications, when to use them, when not to use them,
Yeah.
making sure that we had as much as we could have for those kind of situations. So
Yeah.
it was a very good thing. But and in general, since you brought up the training and the lines, and we need, and you're right, it is out there. It's black and white. They're doing the individual combat task list now, which is the fancy new name for what the soldier common tasks skills were back when I first joined. Is there's so much of this that the training, and we want to have troops be ready to go, but the government and the DOD or the Army or whoever you want to put it on, they rightfully put an emphasis on, we need to make sure we have the actual bullets and the actual equipment that's going to go to combat and do the mission that we need them to do. But for some reason, they still really seem hung up on the back end work of that, i.e. the training. There is more fighting financially and justification wise to justify having anybody, whether it's come to the sim center and get time with that, whether it's sending them TDY, temporary duty, to a training that's specific to what they need to do, whether it's getting the training aids, using the money to buy class 8 so that we can actually train with what they're going to use down range, and say, hey,
Oh my
by the
gosh.
way,
Oh my
open the
gosh.
packages. You like there's training scars and of people saying, hey, this casualty needed a chest seal, so to cover that. And the medics are going there, and you know what, I've heard, I haven't seen it firsthand, so it's only secondhand, but they're literally going into these, and medics are going in there and putting the chest seal on
the bra.
In the package. They're not even opening the package to where the chest seal is, because in training, for all of the evolutions of training and all the different locations that they've done it leading up to that, the answer has been, don't open that, because we're gonna use that. We only have a few. We don't have money to buy this, so don't open the package. Just put it on there, and we'll know it's fine. And so they've had experience. I have heard of experiences where medics casualties would be arriving to a higher level of care in theater. So they're not going back to Landstuhl. They're arriving in theater to the next level of care with a chest seal on their body in the package, not the actual seal applied. And it's just it's unfortunate, because we should be looking at it and saying, yeah, we need the stuff for, rightfully so, for the mission. But we have to, in order to get them up to the mission, we have to let them use the actual equipment they're going to use. I mean, we use actual M4s on the range and shoot them before we go to combat, right? We don't use like, oh, don't actually shoot this M4, shoot something else. Shoot this a bow and arrow or this slingshot in lieu of an M4, because we don't want you using the actual M4 and real bullets, to train. Like, I think there's a little bit of hiccup there, and I think that they could definitely work on that more, if I could get off that soapbox a bit.
Yeah. So, okay. Can I, if you could step off the soapbox, I'm just going to climb up on it for a second. Because, oh my God. I mean, to me, it's so frustrating, because it's like, I could walk out tomorrow and sell for friggin' Pfizer or Medtronic or some shit like that and make, gazillions of dollars just being mediocre, right? Wearing high heels, looking cute and making gobs, right? Or I can actually do this and like I'm immersed in it, and you know it because you see me at everything all the time.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so let's just talk chest seal. Past 3 years,
Yeah.
West Point chest seal has gone on top of 2 different bras.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that one you got me. I mean, that's a whole nother soapbox that I don't want to necessarily climb on, but I should is there isn't enough exposure, and I'm not like, yeah, okay. Oh, we simulate. We talk about, hey, this is a female patient. Are there enough female mannequins, trauma mannequins out there that medics are getting exposed to? Not
You're
even
preaching
close.
to the yeah, you're preaching to
They
the
need
choir,
that.
but let's face it, there's so I'm not gonna dog the names of it, but read the reports, everybody in the DoD,
Yeah.
that there's very few that have breasts, okay? Not to mention, I daily and day in and day out, because it took people 3 years to talk to me about boobs when all I do all day is sell medical mannequins, right? I'm like, give me a
Yeah.
break, right? So anyway, um I'm not even going to address the one that blows up by itself and it's still getting sold, and
Ugh.
it's a piece of and I would love to use the word kickback, but I won't. So anyway, so that whole thing is a disaster. But but there are medical mannequins that have breasts. There are wearables that we can put on that have breasts, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
but we are a litigious society. I'm a female, so is Erica, your wife. We walk into the bathroom, okay? We walk
Hmm.
into a bathroom after something major happens and I could be you're my battle buddy, right? And
Yeah.
and then we're besties today, but you just happen to go like this and I'm mad at you, right? Now I can sue you, tell my CEO, sue everybody. So we're a litigious society for that, right?
Hmm.
Then we're not practicing on battle buddies. I've got plenty of people at William Beaumont and certain places like that that they just get on Amazon, they buy these plastic, it's like those self-examination, you know,
Hmm.
thingies. They put those
Yeah.
on, they do all that. That's fine. There's ways around it. Um, so that's number one. And then but then look at how many times of like so with me and Erica, like in the bathroom, it'll say, if you were touched wrong, say something. If you see something, say something. If you do this, say something. And then now we can ruin someone's career because because maybe you accidentally uh rubbed me the wrong place, or you swept me in a weird place, but I was having a
Yeah.
bad day. I mean, I don't know, or I got mad at you last night, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like that's crazy. So that's one. So that's my soapbox. I'll get off it in 1 second. And then secondly is that it's such a litigious society. So what I but so that happens, but what I've noticed over the past 2.5 years is that and you could probably Google it and read it in the next you might see something in the next week or two, past week or two, right?
Hmm.
Where our soldiers are overheating, and their own officer or own medic person or whatever is too young. They haven't been to Afghanistan or anything. They're too young yet. So they won't take the bra off or the clothes or anything. So we're wasting time signaling somebody, who's in his late 50s, who went somewhere, who just walks over, straddles the thing, rips the things off, puts, chills the patient out, and they live, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just like all this different stuff like that. It's crazy. So yeah, I think those are ways that we can really, I do know from talking to all different branches that we are working on it, but I feel like we need to work on it more. And
Yeah.
and
Believe
and
it or
and
not, there are women in combat, and they're there, and they're not necessarily the ones pulling the trigger all the time, but they're there doing all kinds of different roles and important positions on fobs and on major bases and support roles. And I got news, indirect fire hits there. Things happen. Sometimes they're expected or asked to go out. So if the fob or the base becomes under attack, they have to take up a fighting position and have to shoot back. So we get exposed to that, and they're there, and they may not be there every single second of every interaction with the enemy, but they're there. And if we can't get over the fact that we're medical professionals and we need to do an examination or we need to do a thing and make sure they're treated appropriately because we're scared of that, and that's a problem. And it's actually funny because I've seen it. I actually have a bit of experience with the reverse, actually. When
I was about to go there too. I was about to go reverse too. Yeah, you go. I was going to go next.
Yeah. In one of my training environments, so this was at the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California. My infantry unit, 136, we were doing a rotation through there, and one of our medics happened to be a female, and she was part of the team that I was in charge of at the time. And we were sent, my team, so me and a female medic and a couple of other medics went into what they call the box, the actual training zone, a couple days prior to the actual event kicking off with the rest of our brigade, so that we could be there to support the personnel that are out there, like setting up the tents ahead of time. So that's something that they had to do. So, but they're like, hey, we're going to have people out there that are going to be out there for the next 3 days by themselves. We should have a medical presence out there, which they should, which is the right answer. So I go out there. I was chosen to go out there with my team, and we went out there and did the thing. So we're providing medical coverage for them, and we received on multiple occasions heat casualties because I was fortunate enough to be there during the second hottest season on record at the National Training Center. And so we have people that are being heat casualties, and we're the only medical element in the box, myself and 3 other medics. So everybody else, all the other units from the brigade that are out there are bringing casualties, heat casualties to us. You're like, hey, these guys were just helping setting up tents and working in there. So I get to that. I say that to get to this point where we had a unit bring in one of their soldiers who had gone down as a heat casualty, and they drove to our fob. They were not in where we were at, drove to us, brought the patient in, and the male patient is in there. And so we got a heat casualty. We had to take a core temperature. So a core temperature, you had to take rectally, which obviously nobody likes that. No one's going to raise their hand and be like, oh yeah, sign me up for a rectal temperature take. Like, no, it's not going to be a thing. But he's a potential heat casualty. So that's what we have to do. So we have to declothe him, take his pants off, and do the whole 9, and take his rectal temperature. And as we're doing that, and we're getting ready to do that process, one of the medics that came with the patient saw that I had a female medic, stopped or tried to interjected at that point and said, hey, why don't you leave the tent, because we're about to take his pants off so we can take a core temperature. And in the moment, and at that point I was an E5, but at that moment I said, I to avoid a major interaction there, I said, just go. Like, I don't want to deal with this. Let's just get this done. Just go, right? Immediately following that incident, and we ended up transitioning, well, if you can't do anything, then we'll move on. I'm like, look, you're here. We're going to do what we need to do, and we'll send him back. And we did. And we executed that mission, got him sent back. Casualty goes back. He's fine. He did suffer some heat-related injuries, but we got him back to the main hospital there at the National Training Center, and he was fine. He was able to carry on and join the mission later on throughout. I revisited that medic who came into us and in that center, and I gave him a firm looking at it, and I said, hey, look, listen here, man. We are all medical professionals, and we are all medics, and we were all trained the same. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. She is a combat medic. She is a certified combat medic, and she is with me. And we're doing a medical procedure that is a potentially life-saving situation going on here. Don't ever come into my aid center, my aid station, and tell one of my medics to leave the aid station. We are all professionals, and she is as much a professional as anybody else that I've ever served with.
Yeah.
And I will be damned if you tell her to get out of here because we're taking a pants off from a soldier. Like, this isn't a thing. We're not stopping treatment because we have a female present in the room.
I know. And let's face it, they trained anyway, dude. We've all seen, I mean, like, in every bit of medical training, people are naked, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we've seen it
Try them
before. I mean,
naked. It's what you
think
expose.
about a hernia, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to go, I mean, come on, right? And it's the same with boobs. It's like, geez, I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't, because I'm afraid to, because my guy is afraid to lift a boob. Like, luckily I've got small ones so that I might be only like this flap over or whatever, but like if they're gonna lift it, and bleed out, like
Yeah. Like,
like
I'm not
you're
I'm
afraid
not
to
here
lift
to like,
it,
this isn't a time for me to like, oh boy, what a great time. I'm gonna get a chance to see a
right?
female. Like, we're here for a mission. Like, that's not it.
It's a
Like, that's
body
not
part.
it.
It's not
You
it's
got to
it's a
do
body.
it.
It's just skin. I mean, come on. And I mean, the only thing that's, I understand, like the rectal thing, but you're still putting a device in there. It's not like you're sticking your fingers all up in it and rubbing it
Right.
around.
Yeah.
Um, okay, well, let me ask you this. Well, yeah, well, I had a situation like that where I brought I used to call her active duty Alice. I think I brought her to your facility or y'all saw her or something. It was with a company that I care not to admit. And so anyway, so I brought it to the fleet. I brought it to the not Mercy and Comfort, but I brought it to Military Seal of Command. Okay. So I
Okay.
brought it there, and all the little youngsters were like, doing like the whatever, the NP whatever, and then they're doing all their little teachable seat things with their stuff. And then I say, okay, well, now it's time for us to sweep the patient, really sweep the patient, right? She's wearing a
Mhm.
navy shirt, which, by the way, I'm a little pissed about because I bought it and I liked it. So anyway, but they put it on her, and like all the youngsters are like with the shirt on, like touching like this, or is there bleed or whatever. And so then I go, all right, I'm gonna call the Master Chief in, the one who'd been in Afghanistan like 19,000 times, whatever. That
Yeah.
man jumped up, straddled that bitch, took his shears, ripped it off, did it all, saved her, everything. And I was like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
This is how we save them. And so I do think we can work on that for sure. All right. This has gone way even. I'm in love with this conversation. This is like so killer. I want to ask you about, um, I want to ask you about uh, conflict today. Okay.
Okay.
And I know currently you're not um, active duty conflict today, but you're
Yeah.
training. And um, and I've asked, you know, your staff um, there, like, I understand that it's not like operational medicine that we're like we're like, I don't know, I wouldn't even say at a mystic, but like at like a Fort Bliss, or like a 82nd Airborne type
Mhm.
medicine situation like that, where we're in the
Sure.
field, like,
Yeah.
in that situation, I wear boots. I don't go to Walter Reed with my high heels
Yeah.
on,
Yeah. Yeah.
although
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
stopped doing that a long time ago too. So pretty
Yeah.
proud of it. Um, but um, but so but I'm talking about just with what you're training on.
Yeah.
So we know there's a lot of new like high fidelity type mannequins and stuff, and you have to sell them to me and stuff. I mean, most
Yeah.
listeners are aware of those and everything, but have you s- trained um with what you have? And then I know new stuff's coming, and then drone warfare is like crazy, so
Yeah.
we're adjusting to that too. But are you now training with at Walter Reed with simulation devices that are going to help, what's the word I'm looking for, like help assist, and not allowing, I don't know, and to prepare people for the combat that we're having now. Like, we've all heard of the DARPA contract, right? So,
Yeah.
with DARPA, and I know North Capital Region does a lot with like Tatric and stuff like that. And we've kind of worked with like certain things where we could have drones because the way the warfare is happening now, where maybe we'll uh maybe let's just name whatever country. I'm going to say Russia, but I'm not going to sit here and try and dog all the countries or whatever. I'm just going
Yeah.
to use
Yeah.
an example. So let's say
I get it.
Russia, you know, uh, bombed bombed a section, a dirty drone, where they know that some of their, some of some of the people they want to kill, and that part is legal, to
Yeah.
where they're hitting, but because of the dirty drone, they're hitting the church, they're hitting the
Yeah.
supermarket,
They're
they're
getting
hitting all
their
that,
those
right?
civilian casualties. Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, so with that being said, um, one thing that I know that certain research facilities and contracts and stuff, they're trying to use drones from ahead, and I know you know about this because you're up in the North Capital Region, y'all know everything. It's that they can kind of use their drone to say, okay, these people are dead at the church, so we're not going to go there first. These people are still breathing, in the
Yeah.
schoolhouse. So we're going to them first,
Sure.
and then that, or then like if a grandparents at I don't know, some other place, or if one's breathing but 18 are dead or whatever, like
Yeah.
how are you training, or because I know that you also you're on a sim lab that's a hospital, so you're doing
Yeah.
things like labor and delivery and all that stuff too. So do
Right.
you train on things like on combat medicine anymore?
Yeah. We in the Sim Center, we do get a bit of that. Not as much. We have a tactical medicine office that's part of our directorate within the hospital that focuses more on the combat readiness type training. And
Yeah.
I know that they do quite a bit. I don't know that they're necessarily doing anything per se really drone driven or drone heavy. But I know that there's definitely been a significant change with a lot of the training because, uh, as I said, when I first started, it was so much of it was put a tourniquet on, get off the X, let's get him out of there. And then from the first deployment to my second deployment, it was more, okay, get the tourniquet on, get him off the X, let's call in the bird. But then it was very an airway focused kind of situation where a huge keyword at the time that we were doing our big training was rapid sequence intubation, RSI. Hey, if their respirations drop below 8, you got to take the airway. You got to put them down. We had it, boom,
Say it
send them
again.
down, do
Rapid sequence.
intubation.
Okay.
So doing an intubation so that because clearly the patient is showing that they can't maintain a very good airway. So then we have to then take control of the airway. So we, go through the different paralytic agents and the pain medications, everything to kind of get that patient to where we control their breathing because they're not doing a very good job of it. And so now what they're doing is there's so much more big emphasis on basically prolonged care for us at the field level at the point of injury where
Yeah.
like I said, through my time, it was more get the bird. And if we were ever in a situation where we couldn't get a bird in, say, 30, 45 minutes or whatever, an hour, for the most part, we tried not to go out if we didn't have to. Obviously, we couldn't control interactions or actions on the installation or on the fob. We couldn't prevent the enemy from fighting. Like, hey, you can't shoot at us now because we can't get air. But like, for the most part, if we could control the situation, we wouldn't do that. And so now that they talk more and more about this prolonged field care situation where injuries and medics are being expected and being to stay on patients at point of injury or at a place where or take them back to a location where there may not be a true provider or the air, an air asset may not be able to get to them for a long period of time. That's really been an avenue that has, for me, has been a little bit difficult to adapt to because, and having to train that aspect of it with them because in my mind, it's like, what do you do? Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get air within, 30 minutes. Why are we sitting on a patient for an hour and a half, 3 hours a day, 2 days? Like, what are we doing? Like, they shouldn't be doing that stuff if they can't. So that's probably been the biggest change. And I can say, for the most part, I think physically at Walter Reed, I don't know how much. I can't say that we get to that a lot. I know we do our TCCC training, and I know that they do touch on it and do approach that topic of, hey, what are the medications that we're going to need for longer care? What other kind of things will we need to maintain an airway on a patient longer term and be able to support that? So we're kind of touching on it a bit at our location. And obviously, like I said, it being in the hospital is our main surrounding. We don't necessarily get that same piece. But I would definitely say I know from reading the different articles or interactions and going on and seeing that the post-combat incident reports that come back through and sitting in on some of those virtually, it's been eye-opening to hear them that there is a much larger requirement to sit on and support and sustain a patient for a longer period of time as a regular medic versus an independent corpsman or a PA, or not having that next level provider there. So it is something that they're working on and they're training on, and it is a big deal because of the way that the landscape of warfare is changing. So that's what I would say. But within the Sim Center itself, even though we may want to, it's so much of our mission and what we have to accomplish within the Sim Center at Walter Reed specifically is more schoolhouse-ish kind of training, and like you said, more like in hospital ward kind of training with us directly.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. I told you I would. And quite honestly, I mean, I read too much, man. I read too much to be a civilian. That's for damn sure. But for the fact that, I mean, you also need to be, Walter Reed is, you are getting everybody in the world anyway. So your combat medicine is what you did back in the day. Okay.
Right.
And that's great. But what you're doing now is you're rehabilitating. I mean, I walk into Walter Reed, and I think you know this because I like cry and I pledge allegiance to the flag, and then I want to like hug every amputee. I mean, you bring all of this stuff. You're treating all this stuff. So I mean, you have a high different role. So I
we
don't
get that. We
expect
get
you
the
to.
back end care. We get that back end care versus the actual point of injury care, which is still important, obviously, and very much, has to be trained and ready to do. But it is a different picture to kind of take on, and the training requirements for that are a little bit different, which is why we try to do more and utilizing both the tactical med training office and in the Sim Center, we do run the PHTLS, the pre-hospital trauma life support courses, the advanced trauma life support courses, the advanced life support course, like all these different things that they apply to us in the hospital, but they're also things that check those blocks and get that exposure to those learners about, hey, these are things that you're not going to have. Like you're in a hospital environment, you're used to having these different types of apparatus, equipment, supplies at your fingertips at literally any time you ask. But if you get yourself and remove yourself mentally from the hospital and say, hey, I'm not in the hospital. I'm pre-hospital trauma life support. What actual equipment do I have? Well, good news. You only have what's in this bag that you brought into the room with you. So how are you going to make that work for what you need to do? And it is something that is definitely eye-opening and changing, and definitely a different scope that I, as a medic or a former medic, have to kind of look at and experience and try to train and try to get those. And a lot of that too is where the simulation comes in, is with your buy-in. So now you're talking environment of what you're in. You're talking about the things that you see around you. You're talking about the moulage, the injuries that you see, like those kind of things, how much the smells, things that you can get to, that people that are on the front line, a first responder or a medic downrange or a corpsman downrange looks at and says, hey, how can we try to help them prepare to go do that as best we can? And those things happen.
And I love that. And can I ask you a question? Because I sold you a an immersive room that there was a lot of maintenance issues. I like to laugh at it because they also sold me a bag of goods too, as you know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so don't worry. So does the entire industry. So you know, sue me now, please. So have fun. I'm not going to say your name. I don't need to. It's the whole world knows it. So anyway, um that hasn't even been deployed, correct? Like that, like we bought that. I mean, we bought that in eh, I'll never forget. It was September 30th at 11:58. Your contracting officer busted his ass when you
Yes, he
put the
did.
money in.
Yep.
His name's Kendall, and his Kendall. I think his name is, oh God, his name is Kendall. I feel like it's Kendall Jackson. It's not. It's Kendall. It's not Kendall Mentor. That's another Kendall. Anyway, his name's Kendall. He's my daddy, and he literally he fought his way all the way through after numerous numerous issues that were reported to the Office of Inspector General of other problems with the North Capital Region for that particular company. But and I understand that they're prepared, quite well prepared to do it, but there was a you know, Walter Reed has a strict, you know,
Yeah.
maintenance thing. So I understand this is not a problem of that.
Right.
You know, it was a maintenance issue. So 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 are you, is that working yet, or
It is as of
because
I can
you
say.
brought up smoke, and that's what
Yeah.
made me
Yeah.
think about the
Yeah. Yeah, it's those kind of things. Getting the buy-in helps, and that immersive room is a great tool to kind of help on that regard. There is lots of different bells and whistles you can add and get those kind of things. I can say I do not believe at this time it is currently in use or set up or operational at Walter Reed. It is there, it is present, but I know that they were working through some logistics as far as actual location for where they were going to set that up. We had a plan with the department simulation of a space that we thought was going to work for it. And when we put it to the powers that be to make sure that we could get that install and get the remodel, if you will, of the space that we were going to use to make it executed, the decision ended up being that they didn't want to execute on that. So they were then trying to figure out the perfect location to put that and utilize it. And I think we have that now. So I think that there's
good,
a piece of
good.
that that's getting in and getting done and finally getting into space. And it does. And that kind of stuff. And I
Because
think that
that's
that's
gonna
something that,
really help. That's, I mean,
yeah, I think
that's a
in
killer
training that's
thing.
huge. That's huge. I
Yeah,
mean, just
yeah,
like I was saying, like getting that full, because it's one of the, I think probably one of the hardest things you can do in medical specific training, in a hospital setting, in trying to get into people's or medics, corpsmen's minds and minds' eyes who haven't experienced it yet, like what you're really going to see, what are those things, and it's things that we don't necessarily think about on either end. And I can say I didn't think about it when I was a young medic coming through training. Like I didn't
yeah.
think about what's the smell gonna be of blood and somebody bleeding.
Of
What's the sound?
like burnt
Yeah,
blood. Yeah,
right.
like
The
oh
all of that, like you don't get, no matter what you try to do, and even no matter all the stuff that you can do, you can try to get that, and you can get some buy-in, and it's one of the great things I think, being in the training environment and the simulation environment that I have transitioned to, is really seeing those light bulbs come on, if you will, or the reactions from those medics after the training when they come back and they say to you, without prompting or asking, like without doing a traditional after action review AAR kind of situation, they
yeah,
come back to you after the fact and say, I can't believe, like I could smell the chlorine in the room because this might be a
Yeah,
potential drowning of a child. And when I
right.
walked into the room, I could smell chlorine. So you read me the scenario going in that this might be a drowning in a pool of a child.
Yeah,
You open the door and take me in and I smell chlorine. That's what I would smell. I don't realize when I'm hearing what you're reading into me, I don't think that I need to smell that. But then when I smell it, now those things kind of go. Same thing with a burn. When you say, hey, we're going to go into this training environment and we're going to have a burn patient. Okay, great. You walk into a room, there's a mannequin that may have a burned arm or something on it, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's a burn, sure, whatever. But if you walk into that same room and it's hotter than it should be, or you smell smoke, or when you are cutting clothes or removing clothes off that patient to expose and do the piece, you are seeing a burnt shirt, you are smelling smoke on the clothes on the person. Those are kind of things that really suddenly get you to that place where you can get a little bit more of that buy-in, which then helps. And then they come out and they say, without those little things actually add up and make that environment better, as opposed to just walking in on a mannequin and me saying, well, oh, that arm, I know it looks normal, but it's burned. Like it's
I know.
not the
Yeah,
same as what you get
yeah,
with that. And that
yeah.
immersive environment is going to be huge when we can do that, not because it provides the actual injury care, but it's going to hopefully provide that 360 so that when that person's in that room for at least, even if it's a minute of the training that they're exposed to, that they may only be there for 10 minutes in that room. But if there's 1 minute of that 10 that they actually can mentally lose themselves in the environment that they're not only hearing but smelling, and when they look up from that casualty, they're seeing the mountains of Afghanistan, or they're seeing a tent structure around them, or they're seeing the back of a vehicle, a Stryker, and a Humvee or something that is right there. Like it changes that learning experience for them, and I think it really is a big deal. So getting something like that in and utilizing it in an efficient manner. And one of the big ones that we're going to do with it, or one of the plans we have, is, we have a lot, obviously at Walter Reed, we have a lot of sailors. It used to be the naval support activity Bethesda. It was a Navy base before it became a joint
I like
base.
to call it Bethesda.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
Bethesda.
and a lot of sailors that are there they may get tagged to go on a mission to the Comfort, right? So they're dealing with
Yeah,
a ship, and some of those young sailors may have never seen that ship before, or may not have ever experienced that before. So to be able to have that environment projected around them, so hey, it's not that there's necessarily this tremendous amount of trauma or gunfire or sounds that you're getting from the battlefield, but if you're actually showing up now and you're saying, oh wow, so this is what the medical bay on the Comfort may look like, or this is what an exam room or a surgical room may look like on the ship. Like it's like, oh, now when they go and they actually execute that mission and they walk in the door, they're going to be like, I have seen this. I have a bit. I mean, it's not perfect exposure. Let's not make it more than it is. It's not going to
no, but
be an
it's
exact
major.
representation.
Yeah, you're right. It's major. I mean, I'll tell you this. I live in Portsmouth. I'm like 2 seconds from Norfolk, right? And I went out to Military Sea Lift Command. Okay, they
Yeah,
have all they have are like cubicle office rooms, right?
yeah,
And so what we did is we set up we set up an immersive environment in there, right? I also went to USIS and we set up not their old wave thing. We set
yeah,
up they actually have like two or three different companies like that they were messing with, and it was really cool. They bought them all. I mean, they were like installed. And so
yeah.
what we did is so we practiced all scenarios, but for me, I found the most important one. Now, I sell more to Navy than just about anybody, and it's probably because of my locality, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even though I travel the world, and then also there's a lot of DHA involved in freaking army. I mean, there's a lot of politics. So
Sure.
anyway, so my operational medicine a lot of times is and different budgets and stuff, it's tends to do Navy. So anyway, so long story short is, you know, these guys, it like blew their mind because they, you know, they have a on Norfolk Naval Base, they have like this office that has like several cubicles with a couple of, I mean, it'd be like if you're in a bank, right? Like if you're going to talk to
Yeah.
your private banker,
Yeah.
and you know, we could do scenarios there. Well, that's very important to a ship because
Hmm.
there's no space, you know, and
Right.
then
Right. Right.
all of my stuff has you know, everything that I carry, um because of my job. Like if I were to call on civilians, you know, then I wouldn't care about like Wi-Fi signals and shit like that. But like all my stuff flies, it doesn't have, you know, the signals and all that stuff. Like, so it's nice, like if we're gonna, like I do a lot of subs, you know, and
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
they're snaking
Ooh,
on
tough
subs.
environment there. Yeesh.
Right. Yeah, you know, you need that. So
So a big
it,
shout out to them. Good God, like submarines get.
oh
Yikes.
my God. I know. I'm like, I need to learn more about subs. You know, what I want you to do, favor request. Um, at one point, I don't know how it would ever be. Maybe you could connect me with somebody. I've been to the McCoy, and I've been to the Bliss, and I've been to Carson's, whatchamacallit, Mystic, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind hitting another Mystic, like that's on the somewhere on the East Coast, man. Like if you know anybody or something, I wouldn't mind hitting one because so much has changed since I've been there last, and I'd like
Yeah.
to see what they carry. And and then I wanted to know, this conversation's awesome. I'm not going to edit it, so people are going to have to do. I might do it where it's a two part,
Hmm.
but we covered so much stuff, but this is one of the best interviews I've done. I mean, it's funny because, you know, we weren't expecting it was gonna, we thought it was gonna be like short, brief, cool, great, great. No, but we really carried some stuff. You are knowledgeable, you're awesome. I'm so thankful for all of the time you gave me and for all the information. But I'm thinking we'll probably maybe split this into a two-part series, you know, like what could we do?
Hmm.
And you and I can brainstorm it. Like if I head up to Walter Reed, or if we all meet up somewhere or something like that, you know, then maybe we could, you know, people like you and like an Andy Brown, and you know, like people who have served and back and forth, and your wife and all this stuff, to where we can sit and go like, you know, what are some of the main things we could discuss, right? Because then like we have today a lot, but then we can end up, you know, maybe forward them along and see if we can get anywhere,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so I
Sure.
guess so I want to thank you for your time. The last, I guess, question that I would have for you, and really it's kind of become a fun little statement or like a little game or something, because it's funny to hear how people think, right? So with the people that I've interviewed, I've said, like, if you could say one thing to any, to anybody, any up and coming medic or any of like a one thing, it could be a product that you think you want it to be. It could be a skill set that you think, you know, you know, example be like hemorrhage control. It's not, it's
Yeah.
still the number one killer, right? But like some people say things that are like life lessons, like don't take yourself too seriously, or some things are like be coachable, you know? Like, is there
Yeah.
one thing that you would say uh to our listeners? And because our listeners have kids, our listeners have, you know, like you know, these types of things could really change the world, right?
Yeah.
So is there something that you would like to leave for our audience? And then I will, I'll put all of your information in the, in the chat and stuff like that, so that if people wanted to directly reach out to you, they could, or if it's better for you, they could reach out to me and I can forward them to you.
Yeah, either is fine. I would guess. I don't
Okay.
know that I need all kinds of people email me. Not that I think that anybody will, but sure.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just say, I'll probably do it with most of these. I'll say, I think I'll probably just do it that way because you guys are busy. So I'll just say, for my podcast listeners, send me a message and then I'll connect you. And
Yeah.
I'll reach out to you first, then I can connect you guys. In case it's some person who's like, "Hi, I'm a I'm an admirer from another
Yeah.
country, and I want to be a bride." Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
so but anyway, do you have any? I know you don't have any questions for me because shit, I can't answer anything. But do you have any good advice to give to up and coming people who who are thinking about your line of work, or the country as a whole, where it's going? I'm giving you a broad
Yeah.
thing.
Try not to be very long, as I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I think if there were just a couple of key things, and I'll trying to stay off the soapboxes that I may have already been on, but if I were someone who was looking at becoming a provider, a PA or something like that, my advice to you would be to, utilize all of the tools that you have around you. And by that, I mean your medics and your corpsmen.
Yeah.
They're only as good as you allow them to be. So if you don't want help and you don't want to make your medical platoon, unit, section better, you want to be, and I think a lot of this goes to what my interpretation of the medical corps and medical field, particularly army wise, has
Yeah.
been more of a, I don't like saying the stab each other in the back kind of thing, but it's a very competitive field, and very much we like to say, or we like to compare brain pants, or compare, well, what have you done, what have I, what I've done this, and I appreciate the competitiveness of that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I also think that there's also a piece of that that is very ego driven, which I get from the doctor side of the house a lot. Like, well, I'm a doctor. Like, it's terrific. I respect that. Everybody respects that. It's great. But I think if you really take advantage of the tools around you and train your medics and your corpsmen to be extensions of you, not in a sense of let them do the major procedures that you are trained to do through medical school or through PA school, but allow them to do the things, teach them to do the things the right way, and give them the freedom to do it. Train them often and make them an extension of you. And which is one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I so much appreciated the rarity and the experiences that I had with Captain Atchley, as I mentioned at the top of this podcast, was
Oh yeah, I
he
love that guy. I like I
he
have his
was
name written down
so
like
much,
4 times. Yeah, he's
yeah,
great.
like it. He was such a tremendous influence, because seeing him and seeing him in relation to other providers, PAs within the brigade that I was attached to, the difference between him saying, I have medics, I need to train them because I'm not always going to be there, but
Yeah.
I need them to perform. And having him have the ability to teach us as medics and as NCOs and everything else, to say, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to do it. You're going to do it. And then you're going to teach another one in the medic platoon to do it. See one, do one, teach one, in that method, and then allow them going forward to do that, and give and empower them to do it, and not just tear them down because they did it wrong or they did it this way. Like, obviously we're going to don't do any harm, but Like, give them the opportunity, because they're only going to make you better as a provider by having them be able to. Don't get in that kind of like, well, I know how to do everything. I don't know them, so I'm just going to tell them to do vitals and call it a day. Like, utilize them and teach them and have them be that. I think that would be one for the officer potential side of the house. For enlisted, I would say I mean, I think being coachable is probably a good one, but
Amen.
I would say know what you don't know, and don't be afraid to say I don't know.
I know.
Ask for the help. Stop trying to say I'm better than you no matter what, and say, hey man, or hey, you know, medic, I don't know that. I don't have experience with that. Help me, teach me. You know, do that kind of thing. It's not competition. It's literally help each other grow, because if we're all on that level, then we're all better for it. So I would say stop necessarily saying I'm better than you, and say, hey, let me help you and you help me. So be coachable, but also coach others. I guess it would be one that I would say in that regard.
You know what? I love it. I'm sorry, I love it, but I'll tell you this. It's two things. You're like my hero now. I've always loved you because you're cool, you're awesome, you're cool. But I mean, this has been an excellent, can I say it again? Excellent. Let me excellent. No, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. But I'll say this. Two things that you said, and then we'll end it. But it's just like, it's like the same things that you just said, just in a different saying, right?
Yeah.
So one is, tell me, I live by this. Tell me, I may forget. Tell me, I will forget. Tell me, I will forget. Show me, I might remember. Involve me, I understand.
Yeah.
Like the end, right? I mean, that is it, you know, and so, and then the second thing is that, you know, I've learned this in my own life, and I actually learned it, more, you know, we all know our gifts, right? So here's my psychology 101 for you. Okay, baby. We all know our gifts. Well, so I'm very successful at sales, right? Well, so I started my own business. I understand how to run the business, but I hate it. And when I look at it, I feel like the Dave Matthews poster that came out where the XL is coming into my face, you know, that illusion poster. You know, like I feel like I've like done acid or something. And I have it, for the record, DOD. But I'm glad I know how to do it. I'm aware of doing it. Like, you know how to do things, but you don't want to do it. I mean, you know how to, you know, I'm the same way. So it's like we're smart. But one thing I learned is that I learned what I don't know. And so, and you can ask Andy Brown this in a damn heartbeat. I mean, I've got about 10 people on speed dial, you know, because I don't know. And I want them to know I don't know, because I want to know. And if I stand up and say that I know, then what I've learned this year is, it's called lying by omission. Like, I'm not saying I don't, I'm not saying but I'm lying. I don't, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, so I don't do that anymore. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that this was so great. So thank you so much. I will give you the the Splints and Whiskey. It launches September 9th. You're going to be one of the first ones. So it might be like the next week, or it depends on if we do 2 a week or 1 a week. but you'll probably be like third, I think.
Okay.
It's just so good. I just have to. The first one is so good because it's got my two old folks found people, and I love them so much.
Yeah.
Um, I know they're like wearing suspenders, and they're like so cute. It's adorable. But anyway, so we'll put that out there, and then what I'll do is I'll say to the listeners, hey, please uh, reach out to me, and then I'll send it to you, and
Okay.
because it might be questions that they have, like um, you probably struck a chord of some sort of of something that I wouldn't understand. It wouldn't be something. It wouldn't be something to understand. I wrote a lot of notes, but like if someone wrote me a note and said, "How do you fix a broken ankle?" I'd know where to send them. But
Yeah.
like in this situation, you might be like, "Hey, you said something about I don't know, Ebola." You
Hmm.
didn't, but like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
help me
I
out
get
with
it.
that. Yeah, okay.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and but again, thank you for your time. Thank you
I
for your
appreciate it.
service. Thank you for your service.
You're
And
welcome.
I also want to thank you for supporting. Um, we support our country, and this is the only way we know how. And you and I both know that I've had like this and this and this because I you know, I don't like liars, and then I also like call things out a lot. And
Hmm.
I have, prior to coming to this, I took the MCAT. Like I I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to medicine, not military medicine, everything, but it's
Yeah.
like, but I know injustice. Okay, so
Sure.
I am a loudmouth, so people can hate me or love me, but the truth is that everything that comes from me is authentic. It's because I want it. It's because I'm a veteran's daughter, a veteran's granddaughter. I grew up here where everybody I know, you know, all this stuff. And now I'm watching all of you guys all the time going everywhere. And I'm watching, people that I call on getting killed in Afghanistan. So, like that sort of thing so I am a little bit vocal. So I appreciate that you have always, and your wife and your team, that you've always supported me, and then that you also support the the other people in the industry do too, because we care too. We just don't have
Yeah.
we just don't know what you do. We just can't do it. So
Yeah.
we just take selfies and smile. All right, buddy. You have a good night. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll let you know when this airs and gets out,
Yeah.
okay?
Please do. I appreciate it. Thank you so very much, and good luck with it. I hope it gets a ton of viewers, not because of me, but because of others and everything else. But good luck to you, and yeah, hopefully see you soon
I know.
with whatever we're doing.
I know. I hope so too. I can't wait. I can't wait. Okay. Have a great night. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
All
Take care.
right. Okay. Bye.